Max Holloway says he thinks Ilia Topuria's 3-fight win streak is overrated, and honestly, guys, I just didn't expect this from him. We've all been debating if Ilia just pulled off the greatest 3-fight run in UFC history, but now Max, who Ilia just beat, is throwing water all over the fire, and I'm here to talk about if this is truth or if this is just pure salt coming from Max Holloway, because obviously Max Holloway has a lot of fans, guys, but let's be honest, if this was any other fighter, if this was Jamal Hill, like, we would be all over them for some of these comments. Max Holloway is setting up himself to fight Dustin Poirier next week in Dustin Poirier's retirement fight. It is the main event, UFC 318. We've talked a lot about it, and there's a lot of pressure on Max Holloway. He is coming off of a knockout loss, his first ever knockout loss in his career, but it's no shame. I mean, it is to Ilia Topuria, the guy that has been knocking out everybody, who has just been, you know, literally the face of the UFC this year. I mean, literally just knocked out Charles Oliveira a couple weeks ago, and it just shows, you know, Ilia has power up and down weight classes. And that last fight that Max had with Ilia, I didn't think Max did all that bad. I think Max had a lot of good parts, right? Especially in that second round, he was moving his feet well, landing some good shots at range. But eventually, it just was showing that Max was taking too many shots, which is a problem that he has had throughout his career. We've seen it in the other Dustin Poirier fight, the second Dustin Poirier fight. Same thing happened. He took a lot of shots, and, you know, we've seen this time and time again. You can't take that many shots, and that's what happened. Eventually, Ilia Topuria knocked him out with a left hook, TKO'd Max Holloway. And I'm going to show you guys now what Max Holloway said, because he said multiple things, saying that Ilia Topuria is not the hardest hitter in the UFC, saying that Ilia's win streak is overrated. This all really stems from the debate about, you know, what is the greatest 3-fight win streak in the UFC, meaning, you know, what is the greatest 3 wins in a row of all time, right? I mean, you could say Ilia Topuria with beating Volkanovski, Max Holloway, and Charles Oliveira. Other good runs include Charles Oliveira beating Michael Chandler, Dustin Poirier, and Justin Gaethje, Khabib doing a similar thing, beating Conor, Dustin Poirier, and Justin Gaethje. I first want to show you guys this article from Bloody Elbow where, you know, they talked about a Stake.com interview that Max Holloway had, where he basically said Ilia Topuria isn't the hardest hitter he's ever fought in the UFC, which, you know, isn't initially a salty thing. I saw this initially, didn't think too much of it, but when you put it all together, I think it definitely speaks volume, which is why I want to bring this up, you know what I mean? And a lot of people, of course, have been questioning, is Ilia Topuria the hardest hitter of all time, knocking out now so many guys cold, guys that haven't been knocked out or knocked out cold traditionally. In an interview with Stake.com, Holloway said Gaethje noticeably hits harder than Topuria after going 5 rounds with him, but gives El Matador the respect he deserves for being the first to put him out. I have been asked how hard he really hits, Holloway said of Topuria, and then he says, but comparing his punch, when I fought Gaethje, I felt something, Holloway continued. I felt that Gaethje hits hard, Gaethje kicks hard. When he hit me, nothing was like, oh man, he hits hard or whatever. But you have to say he hits hard because you see what happens to the people he touches, right? So Max Holloway kind of saying, look, yeah, he does hit hard, you know, he has knockout power, he knocked me out, but he's not the hardest hitting guy. Justin Gaethje's the hardest hitting guy. And I think that really that speaks more to Max Holloway's game plan against Ilia Topuria. Like I said, I think one of the best things he did in that fight was his footwork, moving around, not being, you know, able to get hit. So I don't think it was a situation where Topuria, you know, landed shots and just wasn't hurting, you know, Holloway. I think Holloway just didn't really get landed on so much, you know what I mean? Because when he did get landed on, he got knocked out for the first time in his career. So, but this is probably the biggest thing, guys. I mean, this is Max Holloway and an interview with Shaq MMA, guys. We're going to listen to what Max Holloway has to say, because he talks about Ilia Topuria potentially being the GOAT, right? He is asked about this, and I got to say, he kind of rains on the parade a bit. Let's hear it.
You are working your way to another undisputed title. That title is now held by a man you're very familiar with. A lot of people had been saying that Ilia's last 3 fights, beating Charles, you, and Volkanovski, is possibly the best 3-fight stretch in MMA history.
Definitely a good take, but a fair take for sure.
How high do you think Ilia's ceiling is, now that you've sort of been in there with him and seen what he's like? Because I feel like people are starting to have that conversation about, could he be the all-time pound-for-pound greatest when it's all said and done?
I mean, for sure, you know, you can't sleep on it, you know, but it's just tough, right?
Yeah, so you can kind of see, I want to just point out initially, like, he's asked if he's the greatest of all time. You could kind of see a little bit hesitancy, because I know that, you know, there's gonna be a lot of Max Holloway fans, and I'm not a Max Holloway hater here, guys. This is just me being unbiased. I know there's gonna be a lot of fans saying, well, come on, he gave him his flowers. He very hesitantly gave him his flowers. Like, what was he gonna say? No way he's gonna be the GOAT. Like, you can't deny that at this point. What you've seen, I mean, it would be ridiculous to say there's no chance this guy could be the GOAT. I'm not saying he definitively can be the GOAT, but to say no, I mean, come on. What else could he do to prove that he has potential?
He has the names, right? He beat the names, and you can't deny that. But then, you know, when you look, it just sucks that, you know, with everything that's going on, when you look at, you know, that when you look at that Volk fight, you know, with that Volk coming off of what he did, That's kind of crazy.
Yeah,
But
so
people just look at the
here for
name.
obviously everybody knows he's referring to the fact that Volkanovski got knocked out a couple of months before he fought Ilia Topuria, saying that there's kind of an asterisk on that win, I guess claiming maybe the fight would have been different if Volkanovski didn't get knocked out a few months prior.
But people just look at the name. They're not looking at the record. They're just looking at, oh yeah, Alex was the champ.
I mean, I think
And then
that's
me,
fair.
and then Charles did what he did. But Charles was on him what was Charles on a 1 fight win streak?
Hmm.
So at the end of the day,
I mean,
it's just moments. And
like
it's just
Charles was on a 1 fight win streak, guys, but keep in mind that, Charles Oliveira, he beat Michael Chandler. Before that, lost a split decision to Arman Saruki in a very close fight that really could have gone either way. So that quote unquote loss that we're talking about, that one loss, it's a split decision to the #1 contender. Even with that loss there, that loss is still somewhat impressive given who the guy is, given where that guy is, and the potential he has.
at the end of the day, it's just moments. And it's just names. It is one of the greatest names for sure. That he beat in history, but the man is doing what he's supposed to do. He's lining people are lining UFC are lining people up for him. He's just knocking them down. So fair play to him. He's going out there
Yeah,
doing his job.
that's a very interesting line to say. The UFC is lining up people for him and he's knocking him down. Maybe Max didn't mean this in a bad way, and maybe I'm looking too deep into this. But to me, this kind of implies like, hey, yeah, like the UFC are putting everything behind this guy, and they're saying they're basically building events for him, building, I guess situations for him to win, making moments for him, kind of like what they did with Conor and other superstars. And I don't think that's necessarily fair to say. I mean, I thought that giving Max Holloway a title shot, that's an extremely hard fight for Ilia Topuria. If they wanted to build up Ilia Topuria more, I feel like they didn't have to give him Max Holloway. That's a tough fight. Maybe they could have, pushed to make a Volkanovski rematch even more. But I think that the UFC have also given Max Holloway a fair shake. So I don't understand, if this is him being salty. Like, I don't really understand where the saltiness is coming from, because Max Holloway, like, he also has, gotten benefits from the UFC. Let's not lie.
I've seen a lot of analysts sort of discuss the possibility of a rematch between you guys at lightweight. Now, ignoring like the game plan, just looking at sort of the physical component of it, do you identify anything that would be significantly different if you and Ilia were to fight at lightweight, just in terms of the weight and what that contributes?
Yeah, I mean, we're gonna both be 10 pounds heavier than what we were at 45. So that's about it. I think right now, without looking over Dustin Poirier, I gotta go out there, stake my claim, do something special.
Yeah,
get my
and
hand.
just talking about the fight, and I just want to say lastly is like, it just seems like to me, maybe he is trying to say, it seemed like judging from his reaction, maybe he feels like fighting from UFC 300, being at lightweight 155, then having to fight Ilia Topuria 10 pounds lighter at 145, maybe that played into his training. You know what I mean? Like, that's hard to come off, fighting at lightweight than fighting at featherweight. Different diets, different workout routines. You're going to have to work a lot more on weight loss, which means training less on the actual skill, on the actual fighting, which is a big deal, which is going to affect you a lot. And we can see here, look, someone says, I don't know why Holloway has been a bit salty after his loss and a hater. And that's what I think he's coming off as. I'm glad it's not just me. I mean, there's some people agreeing, some people disagreeing. I've been saying this whole time, he's a fake nice guy. He's John Jones, but he doesn't beat women, which, yeah, I think even that's a little bit extreme, guys. Let's relax. I don't think he's anything like John yet. Speaking truth, some people agree. Like I said, some people do agree with this. Probably the first time he sees it as, I just got caught. I'm presuming that he thinks he was winning beforehand, which it was a close fight, absolutely. Some people say because now he knows he's beatable. I think this is the denial stage and things like that. Guys, my whole point to this video is we were on Jamal Hill's dick all last year about him being a sore loser, him being salty, and I don't think that it should be necessarily the same skill. I'm not saying that Max Holloway is as bad as Jamal Hill. Max absolutely has a right to speak his mind, but I think the timing does matter of this whole thing. You got knocked out by Ilia Topuria. This is the guy you lost to. Of course it's going to come off salty. There is no other way about it. Like, guys, let me know in the comments, is Max keeping it real, or does he just need a pride check? Like, is this just his ego getting out of hand after this loss? Let me know in the comment section below. Check out my last video where I talked about UFC 318 and how this card is suffering. I mean, the quality is not that good. You guys are the best fan base in MMA. Hit the subscribe button, like, comment, and share, and I'll see you guys in the next one.